And welcome, everybody. Welcome to our Morpheus Intelligence update. The the Q&A from our previous video of 2 weeks ago. So welcome everybody, and we're going to be taking you through a few things around this particular one, and please put your questions into the chat. We've got any question that you've got about leadership, quite frankly, but specifically if it does relate to what we're talking about today, that would also be fantastic. So let's talk a little bit about what we are going to be covering. So 2 weeks ago we launched a video which deals with part 1 of my book Lead Like Morpheus, The Genius of Conscious Leadership, and part 1 deals with what we call the awakening, the Morpheus awakening. Part 2 is the Morpheus method. Part 3 is the Morpheus impact. But we start with part 1, which is the Morpheus awakening. Now, what is the Morpheus awakening all about? Well, there are three different chapters in part 1. It is call, it is build, and it is release. And so we are covering all of that in what we're talking about. And in the build piece, the call, the build, and release, the build piece, we have a new model called the hand model. And I will be exploring that a little bit. So what is Awaken? What is call? What is build? What is release? So Awaken really, you could look at it from multiple perspectives, but let's look at it primarily from two. The first thing about Awaken is that it's for ourselves as leaders. In fact, it is the foundation of conscious leadership, is we awaken to be more conscious as leaders. We actually getting ourselves oriented, we're getting ourselves focused around that consciousness, that awareness that we have. And I'm going to go in more detail with that when I talk about call. But the second thing is we awaken to our people, to the people that we lead. We awaken to those that are the stakeholders, the clients and the shareholders. And we awaken to all of that. And we awaken also to the broader society in which we live, the community and the planet, because conscious leadership is conscious of all of these things. And so we're going to explore that in a little bit more detail. Now, we have a question that's come up already, and that question is, why do this? Why Awaken? What's the point of it? How does it help? What's the benefits of this whole Awaken concept, this becoming conscious concept? And there are many, many different benefits, but let me start off with the benefits for the leader. Because what's fascinating is the people who come to me who want to be more conscious as leaders primarily come from two different camps. The one camp is the kind of obvious one, where people are very, very task-oriented and they realize that they're struggling to sustain staff engagement. They're struggling to draw out the genius of their people. They may be getting short-term results, but the medium to long-term doesn't look so good. And so they want to become more conscious. And that is the one type of person who is coming and wanting to embrace this concept. But the other one is maybe a bit more surprising. These are people who are so focused on their people that they keep getting stuck with almost becoming the parent of the people. Now, of course, we do want to care for our people. We're not talking about turning that off. But if we care to the point where we own all of our people's issues, what we're actually doing is we're disempowering them owning them. And what we want to do is we want to have much more ownership in our people. And so when you bring these two types of leaders, the very task-oriented and the very people-oriented, neither of which are conscious. So what are the benefits, therefore, of becoming more conscious? What are the benefits of awakening? And there are multiple benefits. So the first benefit I want to mention is that all of these things are so interesting as we look at all of them. But let's start with the first benefit. And the first benefit is that we have the ability to be able to escape the sort of capacity drawing on us with task, or people. But conscious leadership means that we're orienting towards creating capacity in ourselves, whereby we have capacity to handle our people issues without disempowering our people, of delivering on our tasks for our stakeholders without disengagement. You see, we have a whole different capacity when we are awakened, and we have this these additional factors that actually come in, and so that's what we really are, looking at. That's what we are wanting to grow and to increase. So the first benefit is to the leader. The first benefit is the leader has more capacity. The leader ultimately can even take on the they can do things like they can take leave. They can do things like they are they are able to get out there and take some leave, because things will still keep functioning. They have more capacity. They have more capacity to think strategically and not just operationally. They have more capacity to delegate and to build up their people. And that's all. That's why it's called call, build, and release. You can't release without build, and you can't really build without call. And that's the sequence of it. And so that is the short answer is, ultimately, the Awaken thing has the incredible benefit for the leader. Of course, it simultaneously has benefits for our people, because they feel more empowered, they feel more ownership, they feel more like they're there to bring their gifts and their talents. It has exponential value as people use their genius and all this kind of thing. So there are so many different areas, different things that actually start to play a role in terms of this impact of the Awaken, impact of becoming a conscious leader. I want to just add one little thing before I move on to the next question, and that is that it's a journey. Nobody arrives. And even though very often some people will hear me talk about, well, take the red pill if you want to be a conscious leader, and take the blue pill if you decide not to, and both are okay. The reality is that red pill is just the beginning of a journey. It is not a destination whatsoever. And so that's really where we are focused, and that's what we're talking about. Yes, taking the red pill to become awakening, but it's actually take the red pill to just begin the journey, which is an ongoing journey, a lifetime journey. We never arrive as conscious leaders. In fact, I was just having a conversation this morning about an area where I'm still not completely conscious, and it's a growth invitation for me, and I embrace it, and that's what conscious leadership is all about. So I see here we have a question about leaders saying, well, I'm drowning. How can I let go? I don't think my people are ready. So for that reason, I'm going to jump across from this whole idea of call, but rather go on to the second chapter of the book, which is building for release. And we have a model here. And leaders are saying, yes, they're drowning. How can they let go? People aren't ready to be released. Well, this is it. We have to build before we can release. And so what comes up here is we have these things where we want to equip our people, but it's not just equip. So often when we think of equip, we think knowledge and skill. Knowledge and skill is the easy piece, and I'll come back to that. The real issue is getting our people's mindsets oriented, so that when we do release, we know we can trust them. We can trust them to persevere. We can trust them to own. We can trust them to know what to do and why to do it and how to do it. We can trust them to do it with integrity according to our values. So the build process is quite a long process. So in answer to this question of I'm drowning, I've got good news and bad news. The bad news is, to do this properly, you've got to slow down to speed up. And that means that initially you may find some things get slightly worse before they start getting dramatically better. And that is this principle of slowing down to speed up. The good news is it will speed up, and you will be able to get out of the drowning, especially the getting stuck in the operational people and task issues, and starting to see the bigger picture and thinking more strategically and empowering. So the good news is in the medium to long term, the bad news is in the short term, and I just want to be aware of that. So that will become very clear when I explain the model. And so the model has these different aspects. So I'm going to hold it like this so you can see it's the same as my slides. And the thumb is mindsets, and the thumb touches all the other fingers. So in other words, there are mindsets about clarity, there are mindsets about genius, there are mindsets about wisdom, and there are mindsets about ability. And these are the things that will actually give us this build that we're looking for, this preparation of our people to release. So let's go through the others quickly. So clarity is where we are going to, we want to be able to make sure our people know what they need to do, why they need to do it, which values they need to follow why they are doing it, who they need to do it with, clarity around teamwork, clarity around ownership, clarity around boundaries. Because you see, we are strong believers in freedom, but freedom is within boundaries. A little bit like if you think of a football field or a rugby field or a cricket ground or whichever sport you want to think of, there are lines, there are markings, there are demarcations, and the game is played with the most freedom within those boundaries. Without those boundaries, the game loses meaning. And so we want that clarity around the boundaries, clarity around what decisions am I allowed to make as a team member? What decisions do I need to bring back to the team? What decisions do I need to take to the expert on the team? What decisions do I need to take to the team leader or manager? What decisions maybe the team manager even needs to take to somebody else? All of these things, clarity. All of these things are critical. The next finger is the genius finger. Now, the genius finger, a lot of people are surprised about this one. It's actually the strongest, because what we really want is we want people to know their genius. And this starts with the call, where we start to call people out for who they really are and what they really bring. And then the genius is, how do we take that? Where do we find somebody's unique genius that can actually allow them to prosper, to flourish, to work in flow, to do things 10 times better than the average of people around them, that kind of thing. And can you imagine what that does to productivity? Can you imagine what that does to engagement? Because when we operate in our genius, the motivation comes from inside. There's no need for external motivators, because we have the clarity. We know what we need to apply our genius to, and we have the self-motivation of operating in our genius, which brings its own energy, and that's what we're looking for there. And then we have the wisdom. It's no accident that that's the ring finger. This is where we have commitment. This is where we have the buy-in. This is where we have tenacity to see things through. And it's the grit. It's the maturity. I think wisdom. The reason I use the word wisdom is because of maturity. It's where we mature, and we want to mature our people. And then finally, we have ability. So why do we leave ability to last? It's very, very simple. If we have the right mindsets and clarity, if we have the right mindsets around genius, and by the way, the biggest problem with the mindsets around genius, the biggest problem with that is actually quite simple. And that is that most people believe that growth is about fixing your weaknesses. The reality is growth is about building your strengths. And yes, there are times we need to manage weaknesses, but the potential for growth is infinitesimally higher in building on genius than on trying to fix weaknesses. And then with the mindsets around wisdom, do I buy in? Am I committed? When you have those in place, then knowledge and skill is not only easy, it's automatic. Knowledge and skill is everywhere these days. Between Google and Amazon and AI and all of these things, you can learn anything very, very quickly. It's the easy piece. It's the pinky finger. But that gives us a full grip. And when our people really have a grip on how they can bring who they are to the roles, to the outcomes that we are seeking, then our people are ready for release. And so that's really what this whole model is about, is building for release so that we have this incredible strength of our people coming forth and being able to then be released. The age-old adage is, as parents, we're not supposed to be raising children, we're supposed to be raising adults. And that's the sort of thinking, is can we raise our people so that they can fly solo? Yes, we'll still be in the control tower if they need us. And this is actually a really critical thing, is that we still there, we still stay connected. Release doesn't mean disconnection. Release means empowerment, and that's really what we want to be able to do. So before we get on to the next question in the chat, I just thought of another question which I often get, and that is around, is conscious leadership democratic leadership, or is it dictatorial leadership? And of course, the answer is neither. Because a democratic leadership suggests that our people run the show, and then what is our role as a leader? Whereas a dictatorial leadership is, I make all the decisions, I control. Consciousness is a different thing. Consciousness is, I'm conscious that I have a role. I'm conscious that my people are looking to me for leadership. In fact, I'm conscious that knowing what they need is more important than knowing what they want. And a democratic leadership very often pursues, what do people want? What do people want? What do people want? And it ignores what they need. And very often what our people need is something at a much more, a deeper and dynamic level. It often takes quite strategic thinking from the leader to be thinking about, what do our people need? And a democratic leadership is very much focused on what they want, which may or may not align with where we're trying to go. That said, dictatorial leadership is also completely unconscious, because ultimately we know that the delivery happens through our people, and we hire intelligent people. Why would we not leverage their brains? Why would we want to make all the decisions and fix all the problems and come up with all the solutions when we've hired intelligent people? I think it was Steve Jobs who said there's nothing more stupid than hiring intelligent people and then telling them what to do. And so how does this piece in? So what then is conscious leadership? Well, conscious leadership then is the idea that we are listening to our people. We are tuned in. We're tuned into their emotions. We're actually tuned into our own emotions. We're tuned into their knowledge and their skills and all of these kinds of things. And so when we look at all of these things, we go, oh, okay, we are so tuned in, not to do whatever they want, not to do whatever they ask for, but to do what they need, to empower them, to click in, to connect with their inner motivation so that they can deliver. And I think that's a really interesting one. So I see there's another question here in the chat, which is leaders who ask, how do I motivate demoralized people? Can this model help? And yes, this model works in so many ways, specifically around motivation. I remember reading some 12 years ago an incredible book called Why Motivating People Doesn't Work and What Does. Why motivating people doesn't work and what does. And conscious leaders tap into the inner motivation of their people. So let me quickly explain that a little bit. Most traditional motivation is the sort of what we call the carrot and stick, so it's an extrinsic motivation. I present you a carrot. If you do this, I will give you this. If you achieve this, I will give you this bonus. But it's an external motivator. It can connect with inner motivators, because some people go, well, if I get that money, it will help me to do this and this that I really want to do, or for my family, or go on this holiday. And it could have an internalization can take place. And then, of course, the stick, I'll never forget, once I was doing some training in the mining industry, and these people were totally disengaged in the first day of training. And eventually we just stopped the whole training and we said, guys, what's going on? And we discovered that they were told that if they didn't come on the training, they were fired. And the training took place in their downtime, their off time, and they had to come away from home to attend the training. And if they didn't, they were fired. And we very quickly tapped into this and went, hang on, this is not going to work. What's in it for you? How would you? And we tapped into their inner motivation. And by the end of the course, they were raving fans. And they were still upset with their management who'd done all this pressure on them, but they realized the benefit for themselves in their own career and their own growth. And I think that gives an idea of how this works. So how does this model specifically apply? Well, the foundation of all staff engagement and therefore motivation is clarity. There's a lot of research come out very recently about this, and that is without a foundation of clarity, then we do not have intrinsic motivation. We do not have a staff engagement that happens at all. So clarity that I mentioned earlier on is the first piece of all of that. Then genius. It's very difficult to not be motivated when you're called on to tap into your genius. There is something very, very motivational about connecting someone's genius to the clarity of what needs to be done. And they go, oh, I'm allowed to do it this way. Joe over there might do it that way, and Impo over there might do it this way, but I get to do it my way because I'm allowed to bring my genius to this thing because I know what's expected and why, and I can apply that. And so that gives me a whole lot of freedom and a whole lot of clarity to bring it, and immediately that's more motivational. The wisdom one, quite interesting because some people don't want to grow up. But what's crazy is when we lead well, we actually start to tap into that and challenge that. And so as leaders, one of the ways we generate wisdom is by asking questions. And the more questions we ask, the more they go, oh, this is mine to own. So let me give you a simple example. Somebody who says, oh, well, I can't do this because I didn't get that. And then you ask questions. So what could you do about that? This starts to tap into people's inner motivation, their ownership. Okay, so your job is to do this, and you're telling me now you can't. Does that mean you're not really ready to deliver on what you were employed to deliver? What can you do to solve that? What could you do to overcome that issue? And by asking questions, we actually generate the wisdom. And then, of course, the final one, the ability one. There are sometimes people are motivated by putting them on a course, but probably only about 10% of what we learn in a role is through formal training of some kind. Most of it happens on the job or from peers. By far, that's 90% by far. And then, of course, it is easy to hook into things like buying somebody a book or sending them on some training or whatever it might be, doing a buddy system with the expert in the team on that thing. And that, again, becomes very motivational because somebody who feels like they're drowning, they don't have the ability to do something, when they get that kind of support, it does release them. But all the way through as leaders, we work on the mindsets around the clarity, the ownership there, the mindsets around not fixing weaknesses, but liberating genius, the mindsets around the tenacity and the grit of seeing things through, and the mindsets around owning our own growth, owning our own development, and therefore all of that is highly motivational, highly motivational. So let's jump onto the release part. So many people, I often get this thing of, I can't release. I can't let go. And in fact, the whole issue of delegation, I can't delegate. I feel like I'm going to lose control. I feel like I'm going to be out of control. And what happens here is actually quite simple. It's if we try to release without first building, then we do actually lose control because we don't know whether they can do it. But if you've got somebody who knows the absolute clarity about what they need to do, how to apply their genius, the maturity and the grit to see it through, the knowledge and skill to do it, mindsets around all of those, we can release with confidence. But remember, release is not abdication. Release is delegation with a feedback loop. It's not about micromanagement. It is about allowing them to run, but staying informed. And I think that's critical. So I see we've got another question here, and that is, so why does leadership development training fail? Why does leadership development fail, or why does leadership training fail? And for me, that actually, I'm going to go back a slide again, that comes back to the mindset thing. So very often what we find is I've been working with this globally for a long time, and I keep encountering the same sort of thing over and over again. People come on the training and they learn a new model, and it's clear to them. They understand the model. They even understand the benefits of the model. They learn to see how they can apply, they can create the knowledge and skill around that, and they even practice it so that they've actually got high skills. They may even learn, because very often I will do this, I'll say, you've learned this model, but how does it uniquely work for you? How do you bring your genius to the model? And they learn that, and they maybe even learn a lot of the things that can really see it through, and understand the benefits of it and why they should be committed to it. And then I speak to their team a year later, and they say, oh yeah, my manager's behavior changed for 2 weeks and then shifted back. So this is where the training fails. And the training fails for the very simple reason: the mindset never shifted. And I can tell story after story about mindset shifting, but let me tell one quickly. I was once doing some leadership development in Cape Town, and there was a senior leader in the team, and he kept saying, oh, I don't have time to do all these wonderful skills and things that we're teaching. And I just stopped and I said, what do you mean you don't have time? No, it's too busy. There's too much to do. I can't have time. I said, okay, let's have a quick look. So one of the things we're talking about here is doing effective one-on-ones. And we know an effective one-on-one takes maximum 30 minutes and every 2 weeks. So we did a quick calculation for the number of people he had, what percentage of his time would it take per month to do quality one-on-ones? In his particular case, it was only 2% of his time. It was 4% of his time. And I said, what message does it send to your people if you can only give them 4% of your time? And he came back the next day and he said he wants to make an announcement in front of everybody. And he said he will never again use the excuse of time, because the reality is his people were not important enough to him. And his mindset then shifted. And for me, the knowledge and skill on the course was now secondary, because when the mindset has changed, everything else changes. And so what we really want to deal with, and that's what we at Totally Morpheus specialize in now, is mindset change, transformation. One of our favorite little sayings is, this is not training, this is transformation. And that really is where we're hooking in to this idea that we want to seek permanent change. We want to see transformation. And therefore, our primary drive is the mindset that touches all the other areas in every single thing that we do in our people development. And from there, we'll see lasting change, and we can see training efforts that succeed with incredible perseverance. And I think that is absolutely critical. Very good. Okay, I see we are basically out of time. So let me talk briefly about where we're going to go next. So going back to the book, in 2 weeks' time, we will be doing part 2 of the book, which is called The Morpheus Method. So we've just dealt with the Morpheus Awakening. Now we're going to have the Morpheus Method. And the Morpheus Method, we are going to be delving into a particular method for shifting the mindsets of our people. And of course, the mindsets of ourselves. And so that particular section, we're going to be delving into this 3-part process of connect, stimulate, challenge, and how that can get our own mindsets and our people's mindsets shifted. So where do we get the book? So we are going to be announcing in the next week or so the launch of the book. The book launch is scheduled for the 10th of May. And if you'd like to know more, we have a form that you can complete on our website on totallymorpheus.com, where you will get a beautiful little thing, which I've actually got a printed copy of it here, which is the game plan, the conscious leadership game plan. You'll get that for free, but we will then let you know exactly about the launch arrangement. And I think I've been asked that question about 20 times in the last week. When are we going to get to the launch? Well, we'll make the announcement in the next few days. and we're going to have 3 different editions of the book. There is the color print, which is the collector's edition. That one, in fact, we already have printed and available. And then the other 2 editions is the paperback and the Kindle, and those are launching on the 10th of May. And so watch the space, and we will get more information out about the launch in due course. I see our time is up. We're going to end the YouTube broadcast now, and look forward to seeing you next time, 2 weeks' time, 1300 hours on, I think it's the date, I think it's the 6th of May, 1300 hours, and that is in South Central African time. And we will be going with part 2 of the book in a little bit more detail then. And I look forward to seeing you there.